Okay, hi everybody who might be watching this later. This is our mid-level and higher Patreon-only Ask Me Anything. I've got one question, so we'll start with that and see if anybody else joins and asks a question. Questions can certainly, if you send them through the usual link, the problem, oh, I don't have it set to let people in automatically. If you use the usual question link, the problem is that I might think it's a question for next Tuesday. So please make sure that you are using the chat here in Google Meet or anonymously over in our Discord. And I did get an anonymous question in Discord today. So let's put that up and let's talk about it. I think people can see that. Okay. Let's say we have multiple markets or target customer segments to consider. How do we choose between these options? Should we focus on one at a time or go for all of them? For a large established company, how can they balance the optimization of their core business, keeping the business running, with the need to innovate? What are some key signals or metrics you suggest tracking to determine if a strategy is effective, if adjustments are needed, should the current strategy be tweaked, or should we start over from the beginning? Okay, so that sounds like something we could spend an hour on. So let's try to go through this in slow motion. So first, if we have multiple markets and target customer segments to consider, how do we choose between them? Typically, companies have ways to research and prioritize these. It's usually market or marketing research that's going to try to take a look at the different markets that we might go into and try to figure out which one is likely to give us the most whatever we want, money, sign-ups, whatever it is, the fastest. That's usually what you're looking at. It could sometimes be, you might prioritize based on, here's a target market that we think our competitors aren't serving well. We could serve those people. So we're going to start there because that's a market that we think is somewhat unserved or underserved. So I can't say there's one right way to pick a target customer segment or a target market. It's really going to depend a lot on the business and what you've learned from your research, again, some of which might be market or marketing research, some of which could be CX, UX research. I've had a toasty day. I don't know about y'all. So should we focus on one at a time or go for all of them? Up to the business. It really depends. Sometimes you do go for multiple markets at the same time or multiple audiences. Sometimes it makes more business sense to only focus on one, or you're trying to take some baby steps and you're saying, let's just see we can do for these people before we try to do something for these people or this larger circle of people. So again, I can't say there's always one rule. I think if any business book says there's always one rule, I wouldn't agree. I mean, I did an MBA. I heard some of the ways that they talked about doing these things, and I just think it's strategic. You know, anytime you have something that's strategic, the smartest way to do it is to make it highly customized to the company and the company's strategy and possible direction and what's going on in the competitive landscape. Like, for example, it would probably be really foolish for companies to try to become an online scheduling tool right now, like a Calendly, when Google is building Calendly style features. You know, Google can kill them all. And so that's probably not a smart area to go into. If you think you have a market that is somehow unserved or underserved by these products, you can try to go in, but the moment Google makes it, are you toast? Many companies end up being toast. So I can't just say, oh, this business book said this is how you do it. It just has to be customized for each business and each time. You have to kind of run the numbers on what will it take to focus on this audience? What will it take to focus on this audience? Do we have the time and money to focus on both? Do they need similar things, or are we creating very different things? So again, this is something where I can't just say one rule fits them all. This is highly strategic. Looking at the rest of the question, for a large established company, how can they balance the optimization of their core business with the need to innovate? I challenge a lot of companies on what they even mean by innovate. Everyone is saying innovate right now, and they've been saying it for some years. But then I feel like, who's innovating? When I think about the companies that are out there, when's the last time Google innovated? When's the last time Apple innovated? A lot of things people credit Apple with innovating are actually other companies they bought. When's the last time BMW innovated? Even big companies that we may or may not admire, we keep saying we have to innovate, we have to innovate. I'm just not seeing it. So I would be challenging that business. What are you trying to innovate and why? Or in what area are you trying to innovate and why? And a lot of times companies say, well, we want to do something our competitors aren't. And I say, that's great. But once you do it, if it's that good, won't your competitors do it 3 months later? Like you might be first to market, but now everybody is fast. So when everybody is fast, if you are first to market and you beat somebody by X months, will that matter? Let's take the opposite example. So I am hashtag not sponsored. All of my phones are Samsung. That's just who I happen to like, Samsung. We had an Oppo and it looks like it's about to explode. Hashtag not sponsored. So I'm a bit of a Samsung fan. Samsung builds a lot of components that go into Apple phones. What Apple normally does, and a lot of Apple people don't know this because they're in the Appleverse, is Samsung will release a feature to its Android phones. We'll have it for months and sometimes years. And then once Samsung puts it out there and has time to clean it up and innovate, not innovate, iterate and improve on it, then eventually Apple makes one. And then they release it and they go, oh my God, look at what we've done. This is so amazing. Sometimes they'll claim it's innovative and I'll be looking and I'll be going, I've had that for 2-3 years. That's kind of the opposite of being first to market, that there is a benefit to someone else being the first to market because you can watch what mistakes they make. So sometimes being the innovator or the first isn't necessarily the best. And if you take a look at Apple, they're rarely the first with stuff. I still don't even think of them as the first smartphone. Yes, they were one of the first smartphones to become extremely popular, but I remember Blackberries being everywhere before an iPhone was everywhere. I remember the Palm Trio being everywhere before an iPhone was everywhere. So, there's a little bit of revisionist history there, if you ask me. Yeah. So I think the question is, sure, we have to keep the business running and we think we have to innovate, but there's something in between there, which is to constantly create new and better things for your target customers, even if they're not innovative. When is the last time you left a company or downgraded because they weren't innovative enough? Not a thing. Customers generally don't care. We're not thinking about, is a company agile? Are they lean? Did they innovate? Maybe if we're investing in them, we care if they're innovating and if they have patents or things like that. But when we're the customer, I'm not really thinking about that. So why is the business so obsessed with that? I think we have to ask more questions, especially if we want to be strategic, product strategy, service strategy, things like that. What are some key signals? We're still working on this other side. What are some key signals or metrics you suggest tracking to determine if a strategy is effective? Again, I'm not sure there's any one answer here, but certainly, as I like to say, and as I was saying in the metrics webinar we recently did, you should be looking at leading and lagging metrics. The leading metrics come early in a customer's experience or user's experience, and then the lagging metrics usually come later and either signify common company goals like revenue or the number. It's usually numbers that are kind of later in the arc of the customer experience or really reflect the business looking back at stuff like, how did we do this quarter on something? Okay, that's a lagging metric. It's late in our process. try to look at as many leading metrics as you can, because not only are they early signs of success or failure, well, I guess I don't want to say not only there. I really just want to say they are early signs of success or failure, and so we want to make sure that we are looking for those so that we can catch early signs of failure. We don't want to wait until they're lagging metrics. We don't want to wait until revenue is down or something is not meeting our standards to be like, oh no, what happened? Where did it happen? If we're watching some of those earlier metrics, we can see if this is going well. So how do we watch metrics to determine if a strategy is effective? It depends what the strategy is. It's such an it depends. I didn't bother setting up the overlays today. So I am not sure that I can say, oh yeah, here's the metric you always have to watch. I have a guess of who asked this question, and I think this person knows a lot of this stuff is it depends. And this person also knows that they can write to me privately with a specific example if they'd like, and I can try to give a more direct answer. But yeah, it's hard to say because there's so many different strategies a company might have. There might be broad ones like 5% more revenue next quarter. Well, how do you determine if that's effective? How does our revenue look? So it's hard to say, but usually a lot of these things that people think are strategic already come with matching metrics. Is my pen invisible? Yes, my pen is invisible in the in the blue screen, so that must look weird to you. So pick a different pen. Oh no, is this worse? No, okay. So uh yeah. And if adjustments are needed, should the current strategy be tweaked or should we start over from the beginning? Again, hard to say. It really depends on how things are going. If you expected to make 5% more revenue in the next quarter and you're making 10% less revenue, I'm not sure that's going to need a small tweak. That might need a larger rethink. That might need a larger root cause assessment to see what's going wrong, that we were so far from the outcome that we expected. So I think there are times where it's like, hey, we expected to get 5% increase in revenue and we got a 4% increase in revenue. That's pretty good, but let's tweak it, versus a larger disaster. So Karen's got posting something to the chat, which I'll put up on the screen. Okay, I would like to frame my question this way. Oh, let me also put it over here so we can put it in the YouTube description. Many startups are filling the gaps that large corporations are not filling. Yeah, they certainly try at least. I think the question could be, how can large corporations keep serving underserved markets before startups take market shares from them? So that makes me think about a story from my Customers Know You Suck book, which I know you've read, Karen. And that was the company where I asked C-level executives, I said, you have startups that are better than you and they have hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. What are you going to do when they directly go after you, when they are competing in your region or niche? And they said, well, we'll buy them. And I said, what if they don't want to be bought? And they were like, no, they always come to us to be bought. I said, what if they are bought by your competitor? They couldn't imagine a situation in which they didn't buy that company. So I think sometimes larger companies don't play in those spaces on the assumption, and this isn't always, this is sometimes, I think on the assumption that if somebody really does that well, we can try to compete against them, or maybe we just buy them. Depending upon where that startup is in their maturity, that could be a very inexpensive, worthwhile purchase. Not like a Figma, which was what, like a squillion dollars. Adobe probably could have made a Figma killer for less than they paid for Figma. So in that sense, you have to imagine they're paying for the staff and the existing customer base. Like there's value to them beyond the software itself. So I think sometimes large corporations tend to look at the middle of the bell curve and they say, what can we do that makes us the most money because it works for the most people or has the largest target audience, or if it's not a large target audience, really does wonders for a niche group of people. And then they go, let's just sit in that bell curve, and everybody else is an edge case. At a lot of jobs I've worked at, especially in America, I don't know if Linda heard this, being in America, but you often hear, oh, well, that's an edge case. Those people are edge cases. And hypothetically, you could build a business around who companies think are edge cases. And then a lot of startups hope to get bought, especially if they have investors and the investors are pressuring them to be bought. So that's kind of how the ecosystem works. The startup does something better or covers some of these edge cases or underserved markets. And then the big company goes, why should we bother trying to reinvent that wheel? We'll just by them. So I think large corporations have to decide what their budget goes to. And it's interesting because some companies, sometimes I see a company do something, like for example, take Remo. Some of you who've been hanging around with me for the last year or so know that I was holding some events in a system called Remo. Definitely hashtag not sponsored, since I'm in the process of canceling them. So what went wrong with Remo? Mostly they changed their pricing model. I paid $600 for this year. So I paid last year for this year, $600 for the whole year. That's not a bad price to have an online system that I liked. I really enjoyed it for my webinars, but they changed their prices. And I think their price is now $380 a month. So the question is, where am I on that curve? On that curve of target customers, where was I and where am I now? Basically, I look at that and I go, oh, you don't want me. You don't want the small business or the individual trainer or whatever bucket you've put me in. You don't want me because you've now priced it so that I can't exist here. And the same thing happened with the online webinar system I was using before that, which was AirMeet. Definitely hashtag not sponsored, since I canceled them as well. I had bought an AppSumo to use their system at a very good price, $200-300 for like ever. And when they got 30-40 million dollars of investment, they built a completely new platform. And they said, well, if you got the AppSumo coupon, you'll still be on the old platform, but we're not going to update it anymore. And if you buy our new platform, you'll get all the updates. But the new platform was well over $6,000-7,000 a year. Doesn't make sense for my webinars, especially because my workshops. So, I'm charging $99 a person and I get 14 people. I'm not going to pay $7,000 for a system when I'm barely bringing in $1,500 to do a workshop. So this tells me that these companies decided I was a market they didn't want to serve. They didn't want the small business. They didn't want the individual trainer. So but funny enough, that's where these people cut their teeth, as we say, and gained their early adopters. You gained your early adopters by being nicely priced to the smaller business or individual. And then you decided you were too cool for that. And now you don't want my business. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to hold everything in Google Meet. I'm already paying for it. What do I pay for it? $144 a year. It's going to be really hard to convince me to spend thousands on an AirMeet or a Remo or a Hopin or whatever when I've got this for $144 and it's got breakout rooms and fun emoji and things that I like. So I think sometimes the corporations are purposefully not filling certain gaps or audiences because they just imagine these are not areas where we'll make money. So yeah, this is the patron-only AMA. Oh, I've got the wrong date on here. I forgot to change the date. September 19 was the AMA 2 days ago. Let me fix that. Sorry, everybody. I got up very early, went to bed very late, got up very, very early, had a great day, exciting day, cool things happened. But yeah, I don't know what day it is. So it's 21 September. Thanks for putting up with me. I'm probably extra raccoon eyes, as we say. Ah. Yeah. So if there's any other questions, happy to take them here or anonymously in the anonymous Q&A Discord channel. Also, I think you can ask anonymous questions here in the Q&A. If you click on the triangle, square, circle, and you go to the Q&A, I think you can say ask a question anonymously. So that's an option as well. But we just have two people here live today. So if anybody has any questions, get them in there. Otherwise, if we don't have any, oh, Karen's got one. If Angie were here, she'd be laughing. Karen's got a question, but they're always good questions, so we welcome them. But if there aren't questions, we can wrap this up. And then, hold on. So let me paste it into the YouTube description and let me put it up on the screen. All right. What are some examples of companies who have executed a business strategy well over the long term? Define well. People might say Facebook has executed well. It's still popular. It's still growing. It's still making money in many parts of its business. It still doesn't seem to have a viable competitor. Someone might say that was executed really well. We'd love to be a huge, growing, money-making company with very few direct competitors. So I think Facebook executes well. I'm just not a fan of their strategy. I think they do things that I find unethical. That's my opinion, but I think they execute their strategy well. I just find their strategy a little devious. Um, Let me just check what message is coming in here. Ah, Slack is getting harder to use. Did anybody notice? Someone from our community is sending me pictures of the rat problem they have in their house. Okay. So yeah, what other companies have executed a business strategy well over the long term? I think I like the what I see of the strategy. I don't know what any company's strategy is. They're not telling me. But I like what I think I see of the strategy of things like the Google Workspace. So, for example, you sign up for Google Workspace and you get like the Google Suite. So, I've got Google Meet, I've got email, I've got a calendar, I've got all these pieces many people are familiar with. I have Google Sheets, which is like Excel. I have Google Docs, which is like Word. And I have this whole Google verse where I can do all of my business. I'm not opening Word very much anymore. Unless I'm writing a book. I'm not opening, I still open PowerPoint. I like PowerPoint way better than slides, but a lot of people feel slides is good enough. So I think that's an interesting strategy, is to really replicate an existing suite of tools, but because they did it natively in the cloud, its cloud functionality is so much better than the people they were essentially copying, which was the Microsoft Office 365 suite of tools, which is terrible in the cloud. I strongly dislike it, even as someone who does like Microsoft products. Their cloud stuff is awful, and we all saw that. If you edited my book, you know it was awful. So, but the Google Docs don't have enough features for me to do a good job with a book in there. So yeah, I think there are companies that execute business strategies well. I think the better question is what company really makes customers happy and then benefits from that in revenue and loyalty. I don't People always ask me, like, what's a good example of good customer experiences? And I always go, it's hard to say. I mean, I like Monday.com, but Monday.com recently did something so upside down and weird, it's even shaken me a little bit. I even wrote to them, I'm like, please never do that again. Ugh. That was a badly executed bad strategy. But they've now undone it. I guess enough people complained. They actually undid it. Ouch. So, or at least they took me out of it. Yeah. I think companies do execute. We do see a lot of strategies executed well. We just might question those strategies. We just might be like, wait, you're who and you're doing what? Disney is your favorite. Yeah, so Disney is my favorite from the perspective of parks and resorts. I'm not a big fan of Disney movies or TV shows or characters. I tend to be parks and resorts, which would be like the hotels and things like that. That's what I tend to watch because that's an interesting 3D immersive experience where every pixel and smell and rock and step was deliberately designed to make you think and feel and do certain things. And I think that's an incredible living case study. So I'm very inspired by that. Disney strategy has been a mess with their parks and resorts because their previous CEO messed up so much they just kicked him out. He was there a year or two. They kicked him out, and they brought back the previous CEO who had officially retired, and he's trying to clean up the mess. There's some messes that I'm not sure he even can clean up. They're so bad. But yeah, now I think now a lot of fans are waiting to hear what the strategy is. Because as far as we could tell, the previous CEO's strategy was just cut, just spend less, just fire people, cut stuff. And that doesn't work when a lot of us think of the Disney parks and hotels as quality first and not keepiness first. But the previous CEO thought he was going to win by being really cheap. Now they're doing the opposite. Now, I didn't watch the video yet, but one of the YouTubers I follow, evidently Disney announced they're going to invest $60 billion into their parks. Billion? So so the last guy is cutting, firing people all over the place. And I didn't watch the video yet, so I don't know the news. But I saw the thumbnail and it said something about $60 billion, and I don't, but sometimes that's over like 10 years or over a very long period of time. And sometimes it includes things that are really expensive, like, yeah, we're going to buy 3 cruise ships, and the cruise ships are $2 billion each. So I have to listen to that video and see what they're talking about. So yeah, I think we're all trying to figure out what Disney's park strategy is because the last guy messed things up in some ways that they can't fix. It's interesting to think about it. Yeah, no more questions. Boom. No further questions, says the lawyer. Linda, always good to see you, though we're not seeing you. And if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll probably wind it down since I don't see any anonymous questions coming in. And we can wind it down. Linda, anything on your mind before I wrap up? Oops, I almost hit the wrong button. No questions. All right. Well, then I will stop the recording and leave the call and get this up on YouTube for the mid-level and higher patrons. And in a couple of weeks, it'll go live for everybody. So thanks to both of you for participating, and see you soon somewhere. Thanks. Bye. Oop, no, that's the wrong button. You can't end this call. Now, why not? Why can't I end this call? I started the call. Boo.